is a pastor, a psychologist, mediator and teacher. She's also a prolific author of 10 books, and they include subjects of Australian history, Indigenous issues and the Holocaust. So welcome, Barbara. It's a privilege to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ruth. It's wonderful to join you on the interview. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure. So Barbara, you and I have known each other since 2004, and but our audience may not know you, although together we hosted a conference here in Bendigo in 2007. So for those that don't know you, who is Barbara Miller, and tell us a bit about yourself and Norman.
Well, as well as being pastors of the Tabernacle of David in Cairns, which we originally pioneered the church in Cairns in 1996, although it has changed names since then, we have hosted about 10 conferences on the theme of Psalm 24/7, opening the gates to the King of Glory and closing the gates to things that aren't of the Lord, and the Jeremiah 1:10 mandate. And I've written Christian journals as well on prayer and Bible study, and privileged recently to do a chapter in the Canberra Declaration book because Norman, who's an Aboriginal pastor and artist, and I opened the door for the Canberra Declaration at one of our Parliament House Canberra conferences, and the following year we opened the door for the National Day of Prayer and Fasting. So yes, and so I'm busy writing 2 books at the moment.
Wow, very busy lady, and involved in so many things, so that's fantastic. So in your writings, Barbara, I mentioned about 10 books, but 3 of them about an Aboriginal man named William Cooper. Now you describe him in your first book as a gentle warrior, and sitting here in Bendigo, it's not very far from where he was. What can you tell us about William Cooper and where he grew up?
Well, he was born near Echuca on the Murray River area, New South Wales side of the border, but he spent a lot of his time in Victoria as well. His mother, Kitty, she was a tribal woman, and she actually saw the first white explorers go into Yorta Yorta territory. Rumbalara Cooperative and other Aboriginal organisations today around the Shepparton area have a lot of the Yorta Yorta people, quite famous tribe of Aboriginal leaders.
So of course that's about an hour away from Bendigo where we're sitting, so very near to here. So with William Cooper, what were the Christian influences in his life?
Well, basically Daniel and Janet Matthews, who were quite anti-slavery, they established a mission at Maloga, and so William and some of his brothers and sisters spent time on the mission, and he became a Christian there, and Daniel Matthews influenced the men there to put in petitions for land and to be self-sufficient as possible. As a child, William Cooper worked for a parliamentarian, and as an adult he was a union organiser, so there were a number of influences on his life.
So in your book you talk about his being a relative of Pastor Sir Doug Nichols, who's very well known in the Parliament, but also I grew up in the Church of Christ, so I knew of him from there. So what was that relationship, and how important was that relationship to him too?
Well, I think it was a very important relationship. Pastor Sir Doug Nichols was actually the nephew of William Cooper, and William Cooper really mentored him. In fact, he would wait for him outside football matches and say, "Come on, Doug, it's time you started warbling your tongue for Aboriginal people." And so he stayed on his case, and as we know, that was a very successful relationship, as Doug assisted William Cooper. William set up the Aboriginal Advancement League in Melbourne after he moved to Melbourne in the 1930s, and Doug became a part of that. And also together they were involved in the famous Day of Mourning in Sydney, along with Sydney leaders of the 150th anniversary of white settlement.
So, just briefly, what was life like for William Cooper and his family on the mission? Just over the border there.
Yeah, look, it was very distressing for him in many ways. Once Maloga was closed because the New South Wales government had some issues with Daniel Matthews encouraging the men to put in petitions for land, and so they closed Maloga and they set up Cumragunja. And if you go to Cumragunja today, you will see in the cemetery, it's very, very moving, the graves of many famous Aboriginal leaders who were Yorta Yorta people. But there was very, very harsh management by the government there, and so William Cooper led a strike of the people, and they moved from the from the New South Wales side over to the Victorian side of the border to escape that very harsh management. But people were dying around him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he moved, so you said Shepparton, and then later on he was in Footscray as well.
Well, as far as I know, he didn't actually live in Shepparton, but a lot of his descendants do today.
Okay. Yes. Yep. So, so then he was in the Melbourne area itself, basically in the rest of the story that we're going to talk about today.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So I'm talking with Barbara Miller from the Tabernacle of David in Cairns, and does a lot of work, and a prolific author, and